The abrupt and dilapidated return of one of Bleach's best girls is finally here. Yes, our very own drooling half-kid, half-centaur Nell. Episode 2 of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War wasted no time to dive right into the action for our fast-paced story. And in the opening moments, I was smiling ear to ear like a psychopath, watching our mustache man brutalize and taunt his subordinates. During his taunts, he even talks about if his subordinate is a prophet and can see the future, and my god, the irony. The reason I was so excited for this dark moment is because one of my biggest fears with the anime's return was that there would be censorship on the gore. Within the final arc, Kubo emphasizes his love of body horror, and of course his love of cutting off arms of various characters. So being able to witness the brutality that is going to be present this arc, it gives us the affirmation that Studio Pierrot is pulling no punches when it comes to showing Bleach the way Kubo intended. By the way, did anyone else really enjoy seeing the episode title appear on the arm that was torn off, or was it just me? Despite this dark opening scene being only a handful of panels within the manga, I love how the anime extends this scene to really set the tone for what kind of an individual this mustache man is, and the immense fear he instills within looters and Ebern. There's various scenes throughout this episode that are extensions from the manga, and due to having moments like this more fleshed out, I can already hear the Bleach detractors quieting down from their usual lamentations about the final arc's pacing. Bleach fans, we are eating. My god, please tell me I'm not the only one who sat through the opening multiple times while banging your head and with a smile on your face. This opening is one of the best I've seen, and speaking of scenes, there's a ridiculous amount of spoilers within this opening, so if you're an anime only, please don't try to read too much into them. There's a pink tone this opening which comes as a surprise to me due to how dark of an arc this is, but this juxtaposition fits perfectly with the song. It sends a message that hell yeah, this arc is brutal, dark, and gruesome, but within it there's still the typical fun and excitement we have within our story, with moments of comedy sprinkled in. I laughed multiple times this episode while being terrified of the incoming chaos, which just goes to show how much of emotional range Bleach is capable of touching upon. I genuinely had chills watching the scene in this opening of Ichigo extending out his hand, followed by seeing Old Man Zangetsu. Once more, a subtle hat tip to you manga readers. Soon after the opening, our cast is informed of the recent invasion and the sheer amount of lives lost, and due to the composition from the GOAT Shiro Sagisu, the music playing fits the somber atmosphere that both our main cast and Soul Society are now feeling. The funeral for Sasakibe was done way better in the anime's adaptation than the manga in my opinion. There was such visceral emotion felt with the sheer amount of people standing with their heads bowed in respects of the late lieutenant, while we hear the quiet sound of fire. And you can genuinely feel both the sadness and anger within Yamamoto remembering his eldest friend. It's a great depiction of grief. Grief teeter-totters between despair and rage, and due to my recent interaction with these very emotions, this scene was all the more poignant, and honestly, it was beautiful. Can we take a moment to appreciate how well done these first 2 episodes have been? I feel like we're getting movie quality each episode, and I pray to the Soul King it stays this way. However, let's jump away from the sad funeral procession for Sasakibe and into some happy moments from this episode. Nell literally flies down from the sky screaming and crying and hits Ichigo, which is the perfect entrance for our lovely Nell. She's soon after followed by Pesce, and if any of you remember from my coverage of Waco Mundo, the trio of Nell, Pesce, and Donda Chaka were a huge highlight of the arc for me, and they were a source of so much comic relief. However, our trio is missing one member within Donda Chaka, and thus sets forth the happenings for likely the next few episodes for Ichigo and the gang. Operation Rescue best hollow Donda Chaka and essentially save Waco Mundo now that we learn of its invasion. I personally love the scene of the Quincy invasion of Waco Mundo, which is another scene not really fully present within the manga. These added moments add context to a much needed event, and it slows down the pace a bit for us to fully digest what in the hell has gone down with Halle Bell, who by the way is now a prisoner. I always found the dynamic of Waco Mundo with Barangon and Stark Now Gone as a fascinating plot point, because after the conclusion of Aizen as a whole, we were left with so many questions of what was left of Waco Mundo and the Hollows and the Arrancars, and now we finally get this answer. It's always a great feeling when experiencing a story that the world feels alive and living, rather than stories that typically only are alive around the main plot. In the case of Bleach, Waco Mundo was still operating, and now with a new leader, it seemed actually relatively peaceful. I'm sure for many this episode was a sigh of relief due to how many returning characters we haven't seen in multiple arcs finally reappear. The reemergence of Nell into this story was something I geeked out at because she became during Waco Mundo a mascot of sorts for the story and another little sister for Ichigo. With this information dump taking place regarding the recent happenings of Waco Mundo in this situation, Urahara in Urahara fashion arrives back into the story, and I could hear the faint clapping across households across the world as many of our favorite character within Urahara finally comes back into the fold. Is there any better arrival for him than sitting in a window waving his hand around talking nonsense? I think not. With his arrival, a Garganta is arranged, and I swear to God he's Kuba within the form of an anime character because he directs the plot time and time again. If not for Urahara, Ichigo would just remember Rukia being taken away as a fever dream and he'd go about the rest of his life as a normal high schooler. Within Waco Mundo, it was a chilling scene to watch. Prisoners are herded like cattle, and strewn about the sands are dismembered bodies burning. It's truly horrific, and it's what I would imagine a brutal invasion would be like. This army has come into Waco Mundo, conquered and pillaged it, and wiped out so many of the Hollows. Despite Hollows at one point being the monsters of the story, we clearly now know that most Hollows exist within Waco Mundo without harming anyone, and instead just live their lives normally, or I mean as normally as a Hollow can. I couldn't help but feel bad for them, nor could Ichigo, as he in Ichigo-like fashion decides on a whim to go save not just Don Dachaka, but the Hollow and Arrancar prisoners as well. The very first Stern Ritter we're introduced to by name is Quilge Opie, and he's a madman of sorts playing war games and toying with the prisoners as he leads them about. Amongst the prisoners are some surprise guests, Lolly and Manoli, who I genuinely thought we would never see again within this story, and with their introductions I found it fascinating they still introduce themselves with relation to Aizen. Despite his defeat, their loyalty to him still exists, and that's just a testament to the godly character of our Chair Sama. However, they're quickly defeated, and Opie actually makes a comment that if these are Aizen's subordinates, he must not have been that strong. My god, what a foolish comment that is, if only he knew. Speaking of the return of a duo of beautiful Arrancar women, a trio of beautiful Arrancar women appear within Apache, Rose, and Sun as they seek to avenge Halle Bell, and the fighting that ensues is beautifully animated. However, they are defeated, which sets up perfectly Ichigo's arrival to now take on Quilge Opie. That's such an odd name, and saying his name out loud, I'm unsure whether to laugh or just think this guy's like a mad scientist. I really don't have a clue. A moment I waited for since the initial trailers came out took place this episode, which was the Captain's Meeting. And I swear to God, since the very first Captain's Meeting in Soul Society, these scenes have sent chills down my spine. Seeing the strongest of Soul Society stand together, it's incredible. The sheer amount of power in that room, along with knowing that despite all of them not getting along with each other, they stand united with one purpose: to protect. And my god, that's exactly what they'll do, or at least they'll try. At this Captain's Meeting, Mayuri delivers the confirmation of who the enemy is this arc: the Quincy. My god, who would have guessed? This episode was a roller coaster, and Bleach has now turned the typical yucky nature of Mondays into something I look forward to each and every week. Speaking of something I look forward to, we are nearing 2,000 subscribers, and it'd be a dream come true to reach that number. So if you enjoy content like this, please consider subscribing, but most importantly, let me know in the comment section below your favorite moment of this episode. My favorite moment, despite technically not being part of the plot of this episode, experiencing the new opening was life-changing, and thus my favorite part. This has been Hickstra, and as always, be greedier, and I'll catch you all next time.